Good Wednesday afternoon to you. I hope you're having a great day. Thanks for joining us on Sports4CLE. I'm Dave Bacon. A little later in the show, Sam Amico from hoopswire.com will join us. We'll talk Cavs basketball, NBA draft, and possibly some trades the Cavs may be looking at. But we begin by talking Browns football. And whenever we talk Browns football, we are always pleased to be joined by Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. Kay, appreciate the time. We're going to start today something that I know you have written about. Let's talk about play calling. Should Alex Van Pelt take over play calling for Kevin Stefanski? Of course, Stefanski did a great job a season ago, and it was never really decided till into the season that Stefanski would handle those duties. What do you think this season will shape up as far as play calling goes?
Well, I think it's an interesting question as we head into the season. Last year, I absolutely think it was the right thing for Kevin Stefanski to retain those play calling duties because it was the first season in the new system. There wasn't really enough time to get everything set up the way they probably would have wanted to. And there certainly weren't any preseason games for Alex Van Pelt to kind of call the plays and see how that would go. So I think what they probably will end up doing this preseason is I'm sure Kevin Stefanski will follow the plan he had set forth last offseason. Let Alex Van Pelt call some of those plays in preseason games, see how it goes. He also has the playoff game from last year to go off of. And then if he feels like the best thing for the football team is for Alex to call the plays, he won't hesitate to hand it over because this is not about ego for him. This is about what is best for the football team.
And that's really been a refreshing change with this coaching staff. They're really, you hear it all the time, no egos, no egos. There really didn't seem to be any egos, and I think that's one of the reasons for the success in the first year with this staff.
Oh, absolutely. And it's a really good staff, too. I've compared it several times to those Bill Belichick staffs of the early 1990s. And you're right, they don't have any ego about this. This was never about Kevin Stefanski had to retain play calling duties. In the past, we have seen situations like that where it seemed as though a coach just wouldn't give it up or didn't want to give it up because there was some ego involved. Not the case here whatsoever. Kevin felt that he knew that Gary Kubiak system they were running better than anybody last year. And so therefore he knew the terminology. He had called it the previous year. And with the way everything went down in the offseason, it just made sense for him to do it. Now I think he will at least be open-minded about giving it up, but I don't necessarily think he should give it up. He did a fine job with play calling last season, and there's no reason for him to give it up. The only way he would need to do that is if he felt that Alex would benefit the offense by calling plays himself instead of Kevin doing it.
So we're going to change focus a little bit. So Baker Mayfield coming into his second year in this system is obviously eligible for that extension, and topics have been all over the place by different people. Let's take a listen to former general manager Mike Tannenbaum from Get Up, a guy that thinks the Browns should wait. Here's what Mike Tannenbaum had to say about the extension for Baker Mayfield.
Look, here he is under pressure. Now, Josh Allen, if he makes this play, Greeny, if he's there, he can step up and make this throw. Baker has to bail out. Now, here's where I think you see real limitations. He can't outrun Stephon Tuitt, number 91. If that's Lamar Jackson, he escapes pressure, he bails out, he throws a pick. This play just illustrates the two problems I think he has long-term. He's not physically tall enough to step up into the pocket consistently, as Nico just said, and he's not fast enough to outrun leverage the way someone like Lamar Jackson can. So even though he could bet on himself, Greeny, I just think those physical limitations will ultimately make him a B, not an A. And if I'm Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry of the Browns, I know I can win with Kirk Cousins. I can win with Case Keenum. So as Kimberly just said, let's go pay Chubb. Let's go pay Denzel Ward. Baker Mayfield, in my opinion, is a replaceable part.
Kay, I disagree with that. I think you don't ask him to do the things that he can't do. That's what good coaching is. What's your take on Mike Tannenbaum's reaction there?
Well, first of all, I think when you're looking at the game that he referenced there, that was really before the lights sort of came on for Baker Mayfield in this new system. I think once they got to the second half of the season, they basically threw out the things that he doesn't do well. They installed a lot more play action. They let him throw to guys that he felt more comfortable with. They rolled him out more on the keepers and plays like that. And they just did a better job of calling a football game for Baker Mayfield. And you can see the results. He threw 16 touchdown passes and only 1 interception in his final 10 games of the season. And that was pretty remarkable. Now, I do think Mike Tannenbaum, he used to be here with the Cleveland Browns in those Bill Belichick years that we referenced. And then he was the general manager of the Jets. He's a very, very smart man. He knows exactly what he's talking about. And I think there is some merit to what he's saying. But I think that Baker can overcome some of those things that he's discussing. And I think that the coaching staff can help him do that. I think that Baker can take this team to Super Bowls and win them. Now, of course, it's not going to be easy. He's got to be able to get past the Josh Allens. He's got to be able to get past Lamar and Patrick Mahomes in order to do that. But I think you'll see some really, really good things in him this year. I don't know if replaceable part, maybe that's a little bit too strong. I do think that there are other quarterbacks that can excel in this system. It's a quarterback-friendly system. But I think Baker is pretty special, and I think he's going to have an opportunity to show that this season.
Yeah, and again, I know Mike Tannenbaum obviously knows what he's talking about, but I think one of the things about good coaches is you don't ask guys to do things that they can't do. Same show, Dan Orlovsky, former quarterback, believes Baker Mayfield is under, some pressure, and he probably is. This is what Orlovsky had to say about Baker Mayfield.
I'm going to start at number 5 with Baker Mayfield. He's had a lot of conversation here recently of, okay, does he deserve the contract extension? Where are the Browns on him? Let's go back to last year, and the thought process was, well, Baker stinks. Baker can't play. He's coming off of a bad year. And he's going from maybe Baker Mayfield's not as bad as people say he is. So now the conversation is, well, this is a Super Bowl caliber football team, a top 3 roster. We're talking about this team playing all the way into January. There's the continuity of this year, and this finally a second year with the coaching staff and the same offense. I want to see if he could do it again. I think there's a lot of pressure for him to kind of be the NFL, the Cleveland Brown version of LeBron James.
So what do you make of that, Mary Kay?
Well, I also heard Dan Orlovsky in another clip just today, as a matter of fact, sort of disagreeing with Mike Tannenbaum and saying that, that he believes that Baker Mayfield was able to come in here and do some things that no quarterback has done in Cleveland for a very long time. And he had great things to say about Baker Mayfield. But I do think that he does need to show it over time. I think that's important. And I think that he will have an opportunity, once again, even in terms of the extension, if he goes out there in the first 7 or 8 games of the season and plays the way he did in the last 8 games of last season, then you've got 1 year full of that body of work in the Kevin Stefanski system upon which to base your possible contract extension. And I think that would be good data for both sides. It would be an opportunity for Baker Mayfield to say, hey, look what I can do. I'm just as good as Josh Allen over a full season in the same system. I'm just as good as Lamar Jackson. And it would be an opportunity for the Browns to say, hey, look, we see he can do this, and this is what the future holds. So I think that, there's just so many ways to look at this. There are a lot of unknowns, but I think Baker's going to surprise a lot of people this year.
Yeah, and I think the national narrative is a little different than what we're saying here and seeing here in Cleveland, which, I guess you can expect that. Do you have any gut feeling? Does a contract extension with Baker get done, or do they kind of wait?
Well, I think that's an important thing to address, because we saw that there were some quotes that came out last week by Jack Mills. Now, Jack is the father of Tom Mills, who is the one that is actually doing the contract. And I think that's kind of an important thing to note, because Tom is fully on top of every second of what's going on with this deal. And the truth of the matter is that there's really not much going on. And for Sunday, I wrote a little bit about that, how really what's happening with the contract situation for Baker Mayfield. They have not had substantive talks yet. I think both sides do want to head into next season, if possible, and sort of just reset it and just see where the thing is going to stand after some games. Baker doesn't want to sell himself short. I mean, if Josh Allen comes in at $42 million and Lamar Jackson comes in at $42 million, Baker's not going to want to be left in the dust at $36 million a year. So I think there is some thought on both sides to seeing how this thing might play out. So no substantive discussions yet. They will talk this season. The lines of communication are open. But Baker's side, they do want to see what happens with the Josh Allen contract. They do want to see what happens with the Lamar Jackson contract. So those are some key factors in all of this.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside. On the other side of the break, we'll take a listen to Colin Cowherd and what he thinks could happen with the Browns. Also, the biggest question marks ahead of training camp for the Browns. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Life is starting to get back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tric-edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
Sports4CLE continues. I'm Dave Baker. We continue talking Browns football with Plain Dealer Browns beat reporter and cleveland.com Browns beat reporter Mary Kay Cabot. So Colin Cowherd, national guy, you know, he always gets me. And this is what he had to say about Browns living up to expectations.
But if Myles Garrett got hurt, who on that defense do you rely on? Sheldon Richardson? They moved him. Denzel Ward? Love him. Always hurt. Jadeveon Clowney? The poster's better than the reality, right? He's one of those classic, the movie poster's better than the movie. He's a great player in spots. So John Johnson, if Myles Garrett had an injury and had to miss a month, who do you rely on defensively? I like their new secondary, but it's a bunch of kids and a bunch of new people. So I don't know what they are. You got to be careful about Cleveland. When you're listing the teams that are ready to win, Kansas City's ready to win a Super Bowl. San Francisco, if Garoppolo's upright, is ready to win a Super Bowl. Tampa just won a Super Bowl. Kansas City, Buffalo, now that they went and attacked their defensive line, they're ready to win a Super Bowl. Cleveland, I think Baltimore, adding receivers, is ready to win a Super Bowl. Cleveland, got a little Coachella. Sounds big. It sounds like the greatest time of your life. After a couple years and a few rum drinks and 5 days in a tent, you're like, it's time to go home now and take a shower.
So what happens if Patrick Mahomes gets hurt or Josh Allen gets hurt or anybody gets hurt? Football's a physical game. There are going to be injuries. If any of those marquee players gets hurt, Mary Kay, you could say that about anybody in the NFL. Injuries will play a factor, but to single out Myles Garrett and the Browns defense seems pretty selective reasoning to me.
Yeah, it's an interesting take because, as you mentioned, anybody can get hurt at any time. I do think that, for the most part, the Cleveland Browns can withstand most injuries this season If they lose any guy, I still think that they have a deep enough team to get to the playoffs and go fairly deep into the playoffs. Now, Myles Garrett would be hard to replace. It would be very, very hard to replace a Myles Garrett. So that's one where I would actually think that he would be the one that you would want to lose the least out of anybody. So it was interesting that he mentioned Myles, because when you look at Baker, I do think that at least they have Case Keenum behind him, who knows this offense like the back of his hand. And he stepped in Minnesota and went 11-3 and took them to the NFC Championship game. So I think there's a good chance that Case in this system would be able to have success. And I don't think it's a complete deal breaker if Baker gets hurt at some point in the season, because they have an excellent backup that can win games for them.
Yeah, and remember, Myles Garrett missed a few games with COVID and then was never 100%. They still found a way to get to the playoffs, win a playoff game. And this defense that they have surrounded Myles with is, I think, a significant upgrade.
Absolutely. And here's the other thing. When Myles started to tail off because of COVID last year, that's when Olivier Vernon really picked it up. So what they lost in Myles, they gained in Olivier. His first game out there in place of Myles, he had 3 sacks. And he finished with, 9 in his, in the second half of the season. So he really picked up the slack. Therefore, that's what they would need to get from a Jadeveon Clowney and to a certain extent, Takk McKinley. If that combo of those two guys could do some version of what Myles gives you, not a complete Myles, but if they can make up for the loss of Myles, then that's even an injury that they could withstand. But a lot of that would come down to Jadeveon Clowney living up to his Pro Bowl status. I mean, he's going to need to return to the player that he was basically with the Texans when he played with J.J. Watt, if they were to be able to withstand a Myles Garrett injury.
Fair enough. All right, so Bleacher Report, biggest question marks ahead of training camp. There's 3 of them. First one, wide receiver depth. I think the Browns are pretty deep at wide receiver. I think there's going to be some guys that have a tough time making this team that can play in this league at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, I think they have plenty of wide receiver depth. I think they're going to be fine there, especially if Odell Beckham Jr. comes back healthy and is able to do everything he can do right from the start of the season. I think the biggest question mark on the receiving corps is what are they going to do at the third receiver spot? And I don't think it's going to be just one guy. I think it's going to be a matchup situation. If you need speed, you can throw a certain guy out there. If you need a really good, reliable, good route runner and possession receiver who can catch touchdown passes for you, you're going to throw Rashard Higgins out there. So you've got some different things, Anthony Schwartz, speed, whatever. You've got different kinds of guys that can fill that role for you at the number 3 spot. And I think that they will be used interchangeably from week to week.
Now, I'm going to combine the 2 and 1 between this. How the new linebackers and defensive backs adjust to the new system is the second question, and then Jadeveon Clowney is the biggest question. And I think all those are pretty fair, but what do you think about the adjusting to this system with the linebackers and DBs?
Well, first of all, I think a lot will depend upon how Grant Delpit and Greedy Williams come back from their injuries. If those guys can come back and get on the field and play the ball that the Browns expected them to play last year, then you're going to be way ahead of the game in the defensive backfield, because you've also, of course, added John Johnson, you've added Troy Hill, and you would have a really, really nice secondary if those 2 guys come back from their injuries. If they don't, if they need extra time, then there could be some growing pains. Now, Greg Newsome, of course, he should be ready to step in there at some point soon at cornerback. And as we mentioned, John Johnson is going to start at safety. But they go from an amazing and excellent secondary with Grant and Greedy back to an above average, very good one if they can't come back. So that's the key issue there. And then as far as linebacker is concerned, they've got some really smart guys. Anthony Walker, he's a leader. He's a green dot kind of a guy that you can stick out there and have him call the defensive signals. And so I think the fact that they've added leadership at every level of the defense is really going to help them. They added Malik Jackson as a leader on the defensive line. They added Anthony Walker as a leader in the linebacking corps. They added John Johnson as a leader in the secondary. So the fact that these guys are super smart, savvy, and experienced will help with that adjustment period that we're talking about. So I don't think that's going to be a huge concern. I think it will come together quicker than people think.
So Pro Football Focus lists the biggest candidates to have a regression year, a step back year. And they list Wyatt Teller. And I guess I get this just because Wyatt Teller kind of came out of nowhere and graded as Pro Football Focus as one of their top guards. So if he comes back to the pack a little, but he also could step it up as well.
Well, absolutely. And I think the thing to remember about this offensive line, and I've said this a couple different places and on some podcasts and things, is that they weren't necessarily tested in the way that they will be in some other games this season. There were times when they just didn't have to face the best pass rushers on the other team. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they rested their starters in the season finale. That was key because if you don't win that game, you're not going to the playoffs. They didn't have to deal with Chase Young. He left that game early on with a groin injury. J.J. Watt was neutralized in the Texans game because that was a weather game. And they just didn't face the best and the scariest, the most fearsome pass rushers in the NFL last year. So I think that, that had a little bit to do with why they graded out so well as the offensive line. But I think they will get better this year. Jedrick Wills will step up his game. That was Jack Conklin's first year in this system. So I think that they probably will step it up and get better. And I think that Wyatt Teller probably will too. Now, he needs to pick it up in the pass blocking realm. He was a great run blocker, but he has room for improvement in pass blocking. And in his second year in Bill Callahan's system, I think he'll get better too.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick break. On the other side of the break, we will hear from the NFL Network's Adam Rank about the state of the Browns franchise. We'll also get Mary Kay's Unsung Heroes for the Browns. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Better days are ahead. Be ready with the training you'll need to get a great job. If you or your family has experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, try Seek and Help with full tuition assistance. Whether you want to improve your skills, get certified, or train for a new career, go to try-c.edu to check out our programs and resources. So what are you waiting for? Register now for online and on-campus summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
COVID-19 has changed how we show up and show out with our family. Now it's time to take the first step that lets us get back to talking smack with a side of mac and cheese. Before we can safely come together, we need the facts. As COVID-19 vaccines become available, you may have questions.
Should I get it?
Is it safe?
Should I wait?
It's smart to question. Now, get the facts at getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision when vaccines are available to you.
Welcome back to Sports4CLE. We continue talking Browns football with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. Adam Rank from the NFL Network gave his state of each franchise. State of the Browns, likes what he sees from the Browns offense.
To me, it's the other side of the ball. I'm confident in this offense. They're going to score points. They're going to be able to run the football. They're going to do the things they need on that side of the ball. Can they do it defensively? They were 21st in the league in points allowed last year and really didn't dictate things the way you have to as a defense. They didn't take the ball away down the stretch. Had like one turnover in 4 or 5 games down the stretch. I need to see a little bit more of that. And guess what? Andrew Berry knows they need to see a little bit more of that. And that's why he went out and got Jadeveon Clowney, Malik Jackson, Jeremiah Owusu Karamoa in the second round there, and added Greg Newsome as well, the cornerback. I mean, they made a ton of additions on the defensive side of the ball. I talked a little bit about it yesterday, about how they wanted versatility up front all the way through the back, and they've got that. They feel like they've got that with this defense. So they're going to have to start playing like a defense that you worry about, that you have to game plan for, and not just worry about this Browns team. Oh, we'll just have to outscore them. No. I need to see a defense that's going to dictate things. And by the way, I think you will. I think they're going to be much better on that side of the football this year. Should be really interesting in Cleveland. I'm very bullish on the Browns, as you can tell.
And let's bring back in Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer. I kind of agree with everything he said, which is strange for me, I guess, huh?
Yeah, and that was Mike Garafolo, by the way. So yeah, it was really interesting to hear what he had to say, and I agree with him on this Browns defense. And as I mentioned, I do think that they will come together a little quicker than people think they will. They've got a really great veteran defensive coordinator in Joe Woods, that he's worked with defenses that have gone to the Super Bowl, including the 49ers, and he knows what he's doing. And I think, look what he had to do last year with what he had to work with. I mean, he really had a rough go of it. We never heard one word of complaint out of him, of course. And he just kind of held it all together with glue and tape and rubber bands and did whatever he could do. Now he's got some really good, talented players on that defense. He's got a lot of mix and match. He's got versatility. He can throw Jadeveon Clowney inside and Miles inside. He can move Malik outside. He can do so many things to cross up a quarterback, confuse quarterbacks. Even, with the linebackers, same thing. There's so many formations and fronts that they can use. And I think these players are so smart and have such high football acumen that I just don't think it's going to take them a long time to figure out where they're supposed to be and what they're supposed to be doing.
Same report from NFL Network, breakout candidate for 2021, and they list it as Harrison Bryant, the tight end.
Well, that's a good place to start, but I keep wondering, how are they going to get the football to all of these different skill players, right? I mean, there are just so many good offensive players on this football team. And now you've got, at tight end alone, you have Austin Hooper making $10.5 million this year. And you have David Njoku in his fifth-year option year making $6 million a year. And if you want to get your money's worth out of him, you're going to want to get him on the field some. And so, I mean, I hope for the Browns' sake that Harrison takes that next step up into his second year that they hope players always do. But they've got some good tight ends ahead of him as well.
So your unsung heroes, give us a couple that you think guys that are going to play pretty well, but maybe not get, the headlines that everybody does, but will be keys to the Browns being very good.
Well, the two guys that I think of in that category right now on offense would be Donovan Peoples-Jones, because I really liked what I saw in him last year. Again, I think it's going to be hard for all these offensive players to find the targets and the reps and all the things that they need to excel. But I think it's time for Donovan Peoples-Jones to step up and take on a little bit of a bigger role in the offense. I think he's earned it, and I think he showed a lot of promise last year. So that's on the offensive side of the ball. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, I think it's Ronnie Harrison. I think Ronnie Harrison is someone who really can have a breakout season. I think he's got a nose for the football. I think he's got just the ability to make impact plays all over the field. And I think most of us are expecting Grant Delpit to step in there and start right away. But I think it could possibly end up being Ronnie Harrison, just from the experience factor and to give Grant Delpit all the time he needs to come back from the ruptured Achilles. Ronnie didn't show up on the doorstep until September of last year when he was acquired in a trade with the Jaguars. And then he suffered a shoulder injury that cost him the last part of last season. So now he's healthy. He's back. He's raring to go. He knows this defense, and he's one to watch out for.
How important is all the depth that the Browns have, cornerback, safety? It seems like they, the old saying is you can't have enough, and Andrew Berry seems to be living by that, because these are going to be the guys you need in pass coverage. And you're going to face, right out of the gate, you're going to face Kansas City with a bunch of guys running all over the field.
Well, they do have the toughest test possible in the first week of the season, or one of them. And so you want to be ready to go for that. And that's also why I think they might tend towards experience in that first game. I mean, you might end up going with a Ronnie Harrison as your starting safety over Grant Delpit just because he's been there before. He's played that game before. So, you know, they've got everything they need back there, but in some cases, they're still a little bit new and raw, including Greg Newsome, their second cornerback next to Denzel Ward. If Greedy Williams is ready to go, I mean, who knows? Maybe from an experience factor, you either platoon him and Greg at that spot, or I don't know if Greedy will be ready to start that game. But if he were 100% healthy, you might think about the experience factor in what you do at the beginning of the season.
Browns beat reporter Mary Kay Cabot and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. On the other side of the break, we look at the future of OBJ and Jarvis Landry playing together for the Browns beyond this season. Plus, ESPN has ranked the top rosters in the NFL. We'll tell you where the Browns sit. We also have a voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports for CLE. You'll be right back. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
At Social Security, we are always thinking of ways to save you time and make things easier. That's why we created My Social Security. A My Social Security account allows you to access your earnings history and benefits information, request a replacement Social Security card, get a proof of income letter, estimate and apply for benefits, and more. Save time. Go online. Open a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount. Social Security. Securing today and tomorrow.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Welcome back to Sports for CLE. We continue talking Browns football with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for The Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. And Mary Kay, I know this is one of your 21 questions for the 2021 Browns. Will Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry be with the Browns after this season? There's, again, a huge price tag that each of them carry at the wide receiver position.
Yes, they are due to make a combined $31.5 million again next season, and that's the year in which they will both be turning 30 in November. So if they can demonstrate that they can still play at the same high level that they always have, and if they are a large reason why the Browns perhaps went to the AFC Championship game or maybe even won a Super Bowl, then I think the momentum will be there to bring both of those guys back and try to go ahead and pay them at that rate. Now, also, Odell Beckham Jr. will not have any guaranteed money or dead cap money after this season, and Jarvis Landry will only have $1.5 million in dead cap after this season. That means, of course, that if you part ways with them, you don't have this huge chunk of money sitting on your salary cap with a player that's not there anymore. So that's very minimal for those two guys. What it also means is that you could renegotiate their contracts and offer to keep them around at a little bit maybe less money than they were making, or you give them more guaranteed money so that they get something out of the deal, and then you stretch it out a little bit and you keep them around. So there are creative ways to do this. And if they continue to play at a really high level, it can be done. So I wouldn't rule out having both of those guys back after this year.
Yeah, and the one thing we know is that the front office, they will be creative and they will figure out a way to make the salary cap work if it means going deep into the playoffs and getting to the Super Bowl. All right, ESPN has ranked the rosters. Buccaneers number 1, Chiefs number 2, Browns number 3, Bills 4, and Ravens 5. So the Browns roster ranked 3rd overall.
Well, you can make a case. I think the first 2, we would all agree that that's how it belongs. Then when you get to number 3, I think you would have some people put the Browns there. I think you would have some people put the Bills there, and some people might even put the Ravens there. And I think a case can be made for any one of those teams. So it's fair to speak about the Browns in those terms at number 3 in terms of the roster overall, because if you just look at it position by position, you can say, hey, they've got one of the best offensive lines. They've got 2 of the best running backs in the NFL. They've got a great tight end core. They've got a great receiving core. Now they've got an upgraded defense. So I don't think it's outlandish to put them number 3, but I wouldn't have been shocked to see them at number 5 either.
So the other thing CBS Sports has ranked is the NFL divisions strictly by the quarterbacks. And this one is kind of interesting. They rank the AFC West first. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and not to a lesser extent, Derek Carr. NFC West is number 2. That's Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, Garoppolo. And then the AFC North is ranked 3rd with, Burrow, up-and-coming guy, Baker, up-and-coming guy, Lamar Jackson, which that seems a little low for the AFC North a little bit.
I think it's fair right now, actually. I think it's okay because you have to kind of see how Joe Burrow comes back from his torn ACL. I think you could have maybe flip-flopped them and put them number 2. But I don't think 3rd is the worst spot for them, in part because you just don't know what Ben Roethlisberger is going to be, and you don't know how Joe Burrow is going to come back from that knee injury. Now, when he is healthy, he's dynamite, and I think he's just going to be one of the great young quarterbacks to watch in this league. But it might just be a year or 2 out.
Yeah, the interesting thing is the way they've kind of surrounded him with weapons, being the receivers with Chase and T. Higgins. The question is, can they keep him upright? If that line comes together, the Bengals are going to be a problem offensively.
Yeah, that's the whole key. I mean, you have to protect these quarterbacks, and that is a lesson that the Browns learned in part because Ryan Grigson didn't do that early enough for Andrew Luck in Indianapolis. And now that he's here as a senior personnel advisor, he banged the table, jumped on the table for building that offensive line and protecting the quarterback. And they have done that, and it has made all the difference in the world. And teams that don't do that are really going to suffer this year.
All right, before we let you go, we have a voicemail of truth and reason, and this one, actually, of all things, revolves around uniforms. Let's take a listen.
Hi. The NFL made the decision that teams can wear throwback helmets in the 2022 season. And since this is the Browns' 75th anniversary, how about all-white uniforms with white helmets? You could put the player's number on the side of the helmets. They look like the Penn State travel football team uniforms. What do you think? Thanks. Bye.
There you got a little bit of a look of what it would look like, except for the numbers. That's kind of a throwback to Marion Motley days with the Browns. That was the big guy wearing 76 of all people. He was a running back back in the day for the Browns, a big one. What do you make of a throwback to all-white uniforms? I certainly wouldn't discount it.
Well, the helmets would take some getting used to for me. I don't know if I'm ready for that yet. And usually I do like progress. I do like change. I like to shake things up a little bit. But I don't know about that. I think I would still prefer the orange helmet. I'm not ready to go white yet.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they used a logo, since they've resisted that would you go with the Brownie logo on it for a throwback or an alternate, so they become one of the masses that have a logo on their helmet?
Yeah, I don't know about that either. I mean, I suppose for a limited period of time, but I'm still old school in that way. So I would probably also avoid that with the helmet. I just don't think I would mess with it too much.
All right. Mary Kay Cabot, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for The Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we will change things up a little bit. We'll talk basketball, Cavs basketball, with Sam Amico of hoopswire.com. We'll talk about some trade scenarios for the Cavs and the NBA draft. Cavs have the 3rd overall pick in the upcoming draft. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to Sports for CLE. I'm Dave Bacon. We shift our attention from the Browns to the Cavs, and we are pleased to be joined by Sam Amico, NBA writer for hoopswire.com. Sam, appreciate the time. Let's begin. Are the Cavs talking trade with Collin Sexton?
Yeah, I don't know how involved those talks are, but they're certainly exploring the idea anyway. That's been made pretty evident that just from around the league, conversations I've had outside the organization make it sound like, it would make sense if that's something they explore. And again, he's the leading scorer. He's only 22 years old. He's super durable. He's a great guy. There's a lot of things to like about him, but you have to think, okay, he's one of the more notable players in the NBA that's available for his rookie scale extension this summer, or eligible for it. So you have to think of, how much money is he going to want? We're here in the max contract. Is he that type of player? The Cavs have to figure out all that stuff. And then you throw in the fact that they have the number 3 overall draft pick, which there's going to be some really nice available guards there. So there's a lot to consider. And I would think that they are potentially and actually, I wouldn't say looking to trade him, but exploring the idea.
If in fact, they decided to do that, who are what kind of player, what type of player do you think they could get for a Collin Sexton in a trade? And they may have to attach something else to it, but what kind of player would intrigue the Cavs enough to be able to make that trade that included Collin Sexton?
Well, you start with young stars if they're available, and you kind of float those guys out there to see if they're available. Is a Brandon Ingram, for instance, from the Pelicans available, and would the Pelicans want something else? I don't know that you would. There's very few trades in my mind that you would make involving Collin Sexton that would be a swap of 2 players in Sexton for somebody else. I think that there'd be a lot of things involved, either draft picks or other 2 or 3 pieces and parts. Theoretically, we've heard the rumors that the Cavs would like to attach, if they're going to trade Collin Sexton, attach the Kevin Love contract. I think that would be something they would look at. I don't think you need to get an all-star. I think that you do need to get somebody who fits very well next to Darius Garland. The theory around the league is Garland would be the better pro long term and could probably use a traditional shooting guard next to him. So if you're the Cavs, you got to look at those players who could potentially be stars, but the important thing is that they're fits, and then they can shine in Cleveland. So it's really hard to speculate other than to say they would start looking for stars first, young stars, the Brandon Ingrams or the borderline all-stars, the Ben Simmons. I don't know, how involved you'd want to get with that, but those are the type of players that you would think they would be looking at. Kristaps Porzingis in Dallas, nice player. And just imagine, Dave, if you have, a lineup of Garland, whoever the number 3 pick is, say it's Jalen Green out of the G League, Okoro, Porzingis, and Jared Allen. Well, that's, you theoretically or on paper would hope that you're better than and ready to take some next steps, if that's how you feel comfortable and you want to move on from Sexton, which I'm not getting a sense that they are dying to do that.
The guy that's kind of intriguing is Ben Simmons. I mean, that's a guy that was the number 1 overall pick. His shooting problem has, it reared its head in the playoffs in a big way. To me, that seems like a guy that just needs a change of scenery for whatever reason. Sometimes guys like that, it's like, wow, somebody moved on from me, and that kind of is the kick that they need to get their career going. Could you see the Cavs kind of looking at Simmons in that light?
Sure. You will explore that. I think everybody knows he's available. He's a Rich Paul client. Rich is from Cleveland. Ben Simmons has worked out, in the off season at Garfield Heights High School. So, I mean, there's that kind of connection. Rich Paul also represents Darius Garland, and while Ben Simmons had his problems in the playoffs, he's got a major shooting issue on his perimeter shot that's been overstated. People who watch him probably only watched that one playoff series against the Hawks, and he was afraid to shoot because he knew it would hurt the team, and they couldn't afford to play him because of that. But he's the top perimeter defender in the NBA. I can't think of anybody better. He's an outstanding passer. He's a team-first guy. He has a lot of really good things about him. The shot's a major concern. Is that something that, if you surround him with shooters, though, it's not such a big deal because he can deliver the ball and he can rebound. So there's a lot of things to like about him. And I think last summer, when there were Ben Simmons trade rumors, last offseason, I should say, the Cavs were definitely interested and were one of the teams that people were saying, around the league could probably make a play for him. I wouldn't say stay away from him by any stretch right now because, again, that lineup I gave you, take out Porzingis and put Simmons in there, that's still a pretty good team. So I think that they'll look into it. I don't think they'll make like a full court press for him, though.
Yeah, and the thing about Simmons, I would say he's a young guy that shooting is something you can figure out, and you can figure it out usually pretty quickly. Let's move on to Kevin Love. On the Olympic team, is that the opportunity for him to kind of show, hey guys, I still have this, maybe increase the potential trade value so he could land where he probably would rather be?
Yeah, he definitely would rather be somewhere else at this point in his career. Yeah, and he's not going to get an opportunity to stand out there. He's not going to be, one of the main players on the Olympic team. He's going to be kind of a 10th to 12th man. Jerry Colangelo has kind of made that clear. The head of U.S. basketball operations has already kind of made that clear that, Kevin's going to come in, fill a role, stretch the floor a little bit, get some rebounds, and you need practice bodies. And that's probably more or less what he's going to be. Now, presumably the U.S. will blow out some teams and he'll get in the games. But yeah, he can increase his trade value absolutely just by giving, a decent showing there. And he's going to be determined to do that, frankly. Kobe Altman, Cavs GM, said Kevin needs to have a bounce back season for us. He needs to come in strong, and he needs to play better next year. And, you know, I'm sure Kevin Love heard that and is thinking, okay, well, yeah, I'm going to try to prove myself this summer and show some things. And I think the number one priority for him, and really for the Cavs at this point, would be for them to move on from each other. And Kevin Love can help that cause without a question this summer, even just with minimal playing time, just by staying healthy and doing the little things for Team USA.
Yep, if he can show that he hits threes regularly and can rebound a little bit, that will help space the floor, and there are teams that are looking for that. Sam Amico from hoopswire.com and I going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we turn our attention to the draft. Cavs with the 3rd pick. We'll hear some of the names that Sam is hearing could be called at number 3. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. Going back to Sports4CLE, I'm Dave Bacon. We continue talking basketball with Sam Amico, NBA writer for hoopswire.com. Sam, NBA draft, Cavs 3rd overall pick. Cade Cunningham likely to go number 1. Who's the best fit for the Cavs that isn't named Cade Cunningham?
That's a great question. I think that, theoretically, before the draft, you look at 3 players. Cunningham's obviously going first to the Pistons. The kind of mystery is what the Rockets are going to do at number 2. They're going to choose one of 3 players. They're either going to choose Evan Mobley from USC, the center, or Jalen Green, the G League guard, or Gonzaga guard, Jalen Suggs, who everybody is really familiar with because they just saw him, go through that undefeated season until the national championship game. But one of those 3 players, or 2 of those 3 players, are going to be available for the Cavs, and I suspect it'll either be let's just say the Rockets go with Mobley at number 2, then that'll leave Suggs and Green, and I think the Cavs will go with one of those 2. We've heard Jonathan Kuminga, also from the G League, who I heard had an outstanding pro day working out in front of teams in Chicago, and Kobe Altman was there. The Cavs were represented, so I know they really like him. His agent, Aaron Carter, who also represents Victor Oladipo and Kevin Knox and Terry Rozier. Well, Aaron is a Cleveland guy also. He went to Orange High School, so I think that Aaron would love to see Jonathan Kuminga work his way up into the top 3 and come to Cleveland. And I think that's a possibility. That's kind of a surprise possibility. But there's a lot of people who say that he could be, one of the top 3 players to come out of this draft, and a very good draft. So there's a lot to consider there. I think it'll come down to one of those 4. It'll come down to Mobley, Jalen Green, Jalen Suggs, or Jonathan Kuminga. And I think if there's an odd man out in that group, it might be Jalen Suggs from Gonzaga. But, listen, teams don't tip their draft hat or show you their draft board very often, if ever anymore. So a lot of it's going to come down to what the Rockets do. And the Cavs are also kind of having some little bit of conversations about that number 3 pick and seeing if anybody will, mortgage the farm for it. And if nobody does, I'm sure they'll be happy to make that pick there, because this is supposed to be one of the best drafts in a long, long time.
If they do, in fact, keep Sexton and Garland, can either of the Jalens coexist with those two guards, or is that a tough match, tough mix of guards there?
I think it's kind of tough for a couple of reasons. Number one, you don't draft a guy at number 3 to bring him off the bench for his career. And Garland and Sexton are both very young guys, right? I mean, one's 21, one's 22. Then you're going to be drafting a 19-year-old, presumably, if you take Suggs or Green. And, you also have kind of an undersized small forward in Isaac Okoro, who's 19 or 20 years old. So there's a lot of youth at those positions. And it's just tough to kind of get those guys. And it would be really tough if you got a Jalen Green, for instance, and then you told Collin Sexton, you're moving to the bench. And it's only tough because you've kind of made Collin Sexton the face of your franchise, and he's been the team's scoring leader and a great example of how to be a pro since he got here. Since LeBron left, Collin Sexton's been the face of the franchise. And it's tough to tell that guy, you got to come off the bench, and not to mention the fact that he's got to, potentially going to seek a max contract. You want to pay your 6th man max money. So there's a lot to consider there. I think that basketball wise, sure, Suggs or say Jalen Green, Darius Garland, and Collin Sexton would work just fine. It would be awesome. But I think that this, this being a business, there's a lot of other things to consider. And I just don't think the chemistry and cohesion would be there. I think if they go with one of those other guards, whether it's Suggs or Green, they're probably going to have to move on. And I don't think that they want to move on from Darius Garland. I don't think they even want to move on from Collin Sexton. I just think that they know it might be the best move in the long run if they end up getting one of those guards.
Before I let you go, which of the guys not named Cade Cunningham do you think has the highest ceiling? Not saying that they are going to be the best NBA player, but which one could you see becoming like the Michael Jordan who ended up going 3rd overall and becoming a perennial all-star?
Yeah, Jalen Green, I've seen a few, I've watched highlights of the top 5-6 guys a lot, and Jalen Green to me looks like a guy who just has an incredibly high ceiling. He's just one of those guys who kind of reminds me of Kobe Bryant. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be that, but that's who he kind of reminds me of. Super athletic, very determined, aggressive offensively, and just looks like he's got a lot of the tools that could kind of catapult him into that kind of stratosphere where he's one of those great shooting guards, and you just hope that he has the work ethic too. I don't know, that's hard to tell what type of work ethic guys have once they get to this level. But to me, he seems like a guy who just could go to another stratosphere above. And I think some of these guys look fantastic. I think Suggs is a winner. I mean, and he can do everything well. He can play the point. He can play shooting guard. He's got all the tools in terms of the fundamentals. He's a good athlete and good defender. I'd hate to pass on him, but at the same time, you see what Green's potential is, and you think, boy, this guy could be something else. And I'll tell you what, Kuminga is another guy who kind of with these workouts is getting a chance to kind of shine, and really looks like he could be kind of a richer man's Andre Iguodala. A two-way player who can do it all and is a winner and fantastic athlete. So the Cavs are going to have a hard decision to make, and it's a good hard decision that they have in front of them. And this is a critical offseason because you either want to be the Sacramento Kings or you want to be this year's Atlanta Hawks. So this season will determine a long way whether this team is going to rebuild quickly or they're going to wait until we're all 85 years old and finally make the playoffs again. So no pressure at all, Kobe Alton.
And with that, we'll wrap it up. Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. Sam, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Great stuff. Thanks, Sam.
All right, Dave. Thanks for having me.
All right, Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. That'll do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you again tomorrow. Scheduled guest, Jeff Risden from brownswire.com, Mandy Bell, MLB beat reporter for Indians.com. We'll see you again tomorrow. Have a great night, everybody.